Shemai, y'all. Mr. Welch here with another Roundtable video. Second part of a 4-question set. This time regarding how to railroad players without having them realize they're railroaded. It's a master level DM trick, and it's not easy to pull off. Again, I wasn't able to attend my own Roundtable thanks to my internet crashing because of CenturyLink. But thanks to the guys that were able to attend and make it for the Q&A session. If you have any complaints or comments, please put them in the Q&A below. And have a good one, guys.
My next question to you is the following, and that is, how do you railroad your players? That's right, when you actually do railroad them, how do you go about doing that without letting them know and that they're actually being railroaded? How do you go about doing a railroad without actually letting them know that you're railroading? I'm going to do this again because I think I've said railroad so many times. How many times have I said railroad? Quite a few times so far. Okay, start again. How do you go about railroading your players without letting your players know that you are, in fact, railroading them? My question to you, and Wally, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'm going to have 3 parts to this. The first part is actually going to go totally against the question, because if you're playing in a one-shot adventure, just let them know you're going to railroad them. You've got 3 or 4 hours to get this one shot done. There's going to be some railroading. So, but that's not the question. The question is, how do you do it without telling them? Sometimes you just got to tell them, especially for one shot. So the other 2 points, the first one I like to use is relocation. So if you have certain aspects of your game, whether you're running an adventure module or homebrew, and you've got parts of the story or milestones that need to be hit and accomplished, if that's an NPC, if that's an item, if that's a monster, if that's a location, relocate it, reskin it. If it's supposed to be an NPC in a church and they don't go that way, we're like, well, we're not going there, we're going over here to this other town. Make sure that your key elements of your game can just be picked up, like, okay, so you're not going to talk to him here, I'll just put him over here. Then you're going to meet this guy regardless, and the players won't know the difference because they never went to that other location, they never met the NPC there or whatever else. So you just pick it up and you put it over there. No problem whatsoever. They don't even know they're on the train. It's going so fast. The second thing that I like to do for railroading is false options. Like, you come to a corridor, you can go left, you can go right, but it goes to the same darn place. It doesn't matter. But it gives them unless they split the party. Don't split the party. Shoot, I didn't think that through. They could split the party. Then you might be in trouble. That's where your improv comes in. Whole different video. But yeah, as far as that goes, give them options, and don't do it all the time. I mean, that's not something you want to do all the time, but it is a tool as dungeon masters that we can use to either steer our game back onto the railroad tracks, or at least let it go somewhere, because we don't want to go too far off the track. So if we need to, and they take one option, just have them go to the same spot. That's all I have for you. So everybody on the train.
Okay, continuing on our railroad train, Dennis, what have you got for us?
So I've put together a 3-step process for being able to put your players on a railroad without them knowing and keep them there. First thing you have to do is find out what your players are interested. Find what they're interested in. Find out why they play D&D in the first place. Do they like exploring? Do they like combat? Find out what is going to be the thing they go towards when they're given an option. The second step is using your new knowledge of what exactly your players' interests are. Make every single plot hook for your railroad aligning in those interests. So if you have a player that really loves exploring and finding new places, but you need them to go to this specific place that they've been to before, change it. Make it either a completely different place with all the same events and all the same NPCs, or make it different as in there's been an event that has happened. Maybe the castle has been ruined in a battle that they weren't a part of. They're going to want to go to these places and find out more. The third step is for when you don't quite do this correctly and you do that, you make that castle too interesting and it's not a part of what the railroad is. You have to either not describe it or make it as boring as you can. Say, what does this ruined castle look like? What happened? Oh, there was a battle and it got hit with lots of rocks. Well, was anybody hurt? Probably. And just don't give them anything to go off of if they're not paying attention to what you need them to in order to make the railroad work.
Okay, all right. Yes, I've learned a lot. It's funny how your suggestions are very similar to my own. So that's going to be difficult for me when it's my turn. Jacob, what have you got for us?
Yeah, when it comes to railroading your players, I tend to want to go for more, I guess, what I would call like the soft railroad approach, as in like if I know your character motivations, if I know the things that you want to do, and I know what your objectives are for this quest, then if I frame things in such a way to promote kind of expediency, like if I tell you you have 3 days to get into the castle and save the princess before she gets executed by an orc chieftain or whatever, like if I tell you that, I think that inherently will bring that expediency without necessarily having to make sure that they have to hit these things like plot point by plot point. Something I was thinking about is like when you have objectives like that, when you have objectives that kind of uh, promote uh, like you have to do this quickly, you have to do this before this timer runs out. If you have a bunch of those things kind of going on at the same time, I think that kind of opens the players to still kind of have the ability to pick their direction, even if it is kind of like, I know where you're going to end up at the end of the day. You're going to try to save this person because that's your objective. That's your job. That's the thing you got hired for. So yeah, it's a tough one for me. And I don't want to have like a completely confined kind of space. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Fair enough. Thank you for that. William, what have you got? Railroading. Take us on a train.
Okay, so I was just going to start off by saying I think I really like the way that Wally described it as what was it, relocating. I was going to recommend very similar to that, but I didn't have a word for it. I think that's a great term for it. There you go. The other thing that I really like to do is, I've talked a lot about how like I like tropes as a structural element. I've mentioned that before on these panels, but I think that people naturally like to fulfill tropes. That's something they enjoy doing, and if you give them the opportunity to do it, most of the time they will consciously walk there, especially if you know what movies and stuff your players like. I had done a heist adventure at one point where I planned in my books for, I wanted an entire last session that was like post heist where everything had gone wrong and they had to panic and figure out who the rat was. And I had I didn't need to railroad anyone into this like suspicion or anything, because the players just naturally like became heist characters and acted like heist characters, and they got to the safe house and they immediately went full Reservoir Dogs mode, and they went with like, you're the traitor. So I think that so long as you set your structure up in such a way that it becomes easy for your players to see different roles and tropes that they can step into, I think they will go for it pretty much 100% of the time. The classic example, again, I think I've mentioned it every time I've mentioned it on these, but if you put them in a Western story, they're going to want to have a sundown gunfight, and if you put an angry guy in a bar, they're going to shoot that guy at midnight. That's just how it's going to go. You can pretty much assume it's happening 100% of the time. And then the very last thing I was going to say for not only making sure that no matter how you railroad, you can always just feign that they got one over on you. Like if they have that they just walked in somewhere and killed somebody, and you just go, oh man, I didn't think you guys were gonna do that, and then they just pat themselves on the back and they're like, oh, we got one over on you, didn't we?
Sounds, yes, absolutely. some of this means that I don't really have to say very much, which is fortunate for everybody else, which is great. But there are some problems I find. Hence, again, here we go. I do just move locations and encounters when I decide that I can't figure out what to do and I need to railroad my players. I think probably the most common thing that I will also do if I don't move a location or an encounter and I'm concerned that it's just not going to work or I can't move it. Sometimes you just can't move a location or an encounter or an NPC. Sometimes it doesn't sort of mesh right. Suddenly, if you see that I am running a random encounter and it's a battle random encounter and not a non-combat encounter, you know I am railroading the snot out of you because I don't know what to do with you right now. So you're going on the combat railroad right now with Fred. I guess the other thing I also do, and it doesn't show up so much in old pre-made adventures because they used to have a lot of empty rooms. But if you go into a room or a location and there's nothing there, and you say, we've entered the room. What's in the room? It's empty. Are there any creatures here? No, there are no creatures here. I search for treasure. You find no treasure. Is there a door? No, there's no door. Is there a window? No, there's no window. You get the point. Like there is a dead end here. I've just put a room or a dead end here. So they have to go back to the other route that they didn't want to take the first time round and take the route that I wanted them to take. That's often what I would do. And I guess the other problem and the reason why I don't do too much railroading nowadays is because my players, I've been playing with them a long time and my home group know me too well. They know each other too well. And they've all been dungeon masters and done quite a lot of it. So they know when I'm doing something. They know when I'm tricking them. They usually know when I've upped the monster power because they know they've memorized all the monsters in the monster manual. I have to sort of tell them that stuff outright. Otherwise, they're just going to take the piss out of me the whole time. Like, so you've done some changes to this because this monster has got this many hit points. But they know when I'm railroading. So if I do it, they will heckle the hell out of me. So it's better that I don't. Otherwise, it's heckle time, and there is no mercy in my group with regard to other dungeon masters. We've known each other too long, unfortunately. Does anybody want to add anything else? There we go. So, Mr. Welch, Glenn would like to know how you go about railroading your players without letting them know that they're being railroaded. Let us know in the comments section.